And we are live.
All right.
How are you doing today?
Okay. I'm doing really well. How are you?
Good, good. It's been a good day. Having nice weather on the East Coast. How's the West Coast?
Looking good out here, man. It's been a busy week. It's been a really busy week. And it's only Thursday.
I
A lot of
know.
stuff going on
So
at
busy.
Cribl this week.
hmm Yeah, it's exciting. Love talking to customers. We're getting ready for Criblcon. Getting ready for just the marathon of conferences that are coming up this
Yeah.
summer. So it's exciting stuff. It's great to get out in front of people. As much as it's been a little weird getting used to being in person, but I'm glad to get back to it.
It's nice. It's a nice change of pace.
Mhm.
We had an event where we're doing a ton of events this year. If you're looking for Cribl people to talk to, you don't have to look too hard. we are we are everywhere. I think we're doing
Mhm.
270 events this year. Doing big events, you're doing small local events. So all kinds of opportunities to get out and chat with us about your observability story, your cybersecurity story. But let's talk a little bit about what we announced yesterday. Ed's dealing with his cat.
Mhm.
So do you want to share the content?
What we announced yesterday?
Yeah, the deck that we made.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, here's let's bring up the deck. Here we go.
All right. So we announced our very first contest. And so this is about Cribble packs. Ed, do you want to say a few words about what Cribble packs are?
This is something that's real exciting. It's a great way to represent your data as code to give you repeatable functions, repeatable code in order to turn the data that you care about into value. We have pre-built packs for Windows data, Palo Alto, various middleware systems, syslog. And think of it as a starting point to get what you want faster, especially if you're new to Cribble Stream. Just it's a great way to kind of understand here's how I want to do something, here's how I can take different pieces of our packs and build your own packs. So it's a great it's for like if you're a Splunk user, for example, the equivalent would be like a Splunk TA. This is a great thing to do. It's something you definitely want to get into using CripleStream.
Yeah, it's kind of an easy button. So it's predefined routes and pipelines, and like Ed said, it gives you a starting point to figure out. Like especially if you're dealing with like a really complex or noisy data source, you don't always want to start from scratch. But yesterday on 420, we have our Roll Your Own Cribble Pack contest. There's going to be another slide where you can click on a QR code. We'll leave that up for a bit. And go to the blog that describes the whole thing. It's going for a few months. I think we judge it in what, July?
Right. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
I really enjoy what our community team is doing. We have Rachel, Art, Aaron, just fostering a fantastic sense of community. How the community can work together. How Cribble can support the community to get more value out of our tools. It's a
Yeah.
great thing.
So you can see some quotes from people that have used PAX, kind of the advantages that they've realized. There's going to be prizes in three different categories, right? Best technical pack, the most popular. So popularity wins, folks. Whether it's social media or your Cribble pack, and then highest impact. And I don't know what the details are for how highest impact is going to be judged. Maybe most data reduced. Most data enriched, something like that. But that'll be, I think, up to the community to judge. And then we have lots of different prizes. Now, the downside is because of legal restrictions, we can only open this up to folks in the U.S. So we will come up with another contest for folks in EMEA and other regions as well. But unfortunately, right now, this one I believe is only open for folks in the U.S. Now, if you want to get involved, Ed, do you want to put the link up for the
Got
community?
it?
Yeah, so go ahead and click on this QR code. I assure you, it doesn't take you anywhere. It won't. It's not the Coinbase code. It won't give you any crypto or any viruses. It'll take you to our
Or
blog.
Russian malware. Yeah.
Russian malware. That
Yep.
comes. That's just a bonus we all get anymore.
Yeah. Mhm.
But this will give you the details of what the contest is, how long it runs. You can go to our Cribble community on Slack and start chatting with folks about what they're doing. On GitHub, you can see the current packs that are already there. I think one other point to make here is packs do not have to be public. If you want to create them just within your enterprise and share and use them internally, you can do that also. So you're not obligated to share your work with the world. Clearly, if you want to enter the contest, you do. But you have a lot of flexibility in how you choose to roll out packs, either publicly or just within your organization. So this code will give you code will give you the link to a lot more information, and once again, all kinds of stuff in the community as well.
I'm really excited to see what the community does. Every day, people talk about how can I use these tools to get value, and the whole point of the pack is making it repeatable, especially as you grow your installation with multiple worker groups. Instead of having to recreate the wheel for every worker group, you use your pack, install it, and you're done. It makes getting work done so much simpler.
Yeah, it really is an easy button. And so this is our first contest. We're really excited. I think one of the things that really impressed me about Cribl before I joined was basically how cool the community was, right? Like people, they help each other out. It wasn't, I'm in a lot of communities on Slack, and, look at our, what similar projects are doing. And a lot of those communities are very transactional. Hey, this configuration's broken. Someone fixes it. And then that's it. There's no other kind of conversation. Our community is pretty vibrant. They've self-organized around 2 different user groups. And I hung out there for a while before I decided to join the company, just to see how the Cribl employees interacted with the community, and it was all very cool, very collegial, and they like to have a good time. So it's definitely a good place to hang out, even if you just have questions about your observability story or how you might want to get data in. So definitely check it out if that's something you want to be interested in or are interested in. And then Ed, you want to talk about Criblcon.
Oh, I just want to mention one thing. This is something,
Sorry.
especially with communities. I see this all the time. There's attitude. There's people who are not exactly helpful. You even see it from employees of companies that are in the communities, and this is something that the absence of that attitude, the just genuine sense of wanting to help people get work done. Everyone understands what everyone's going through, and it's great. Especially it's a welcoming to people who may not feel like they have a confidence to say, "Hey, I need help." And so and that's something that we're all very focused on, is making sure we're helping people. So if you need help, if you don't feel confident asking us publicly, ask us all in our Slack DMs. We're here to help you.
Yeah, definitely. And that goes 24/7. All right. And we're really excited. Speaking of events,
Yes.
like there just weren't enough out there, so we had to do our own. Ed, I know you've been heavily involved with this, so I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, this is something just super exciting. Doing it adjacent to existing conferences, and I was mentioning the marathon of conferences that are coming up for June, July, and August. So our first one's going to be with RSA. We're also going to do one out in Vegas at MGM outside of SplunkConf, and then at Black Hat. It's going to be a lot of fun. Be very casual. We have the founders there. We're going to have everyone doing demos. I'm going to be at a couple of them doing live streams. So if you want to come sit down with me, come do the live stream with me, come tell me about what you're doing, tell me what you're excited about. And we're going to be there to talk, to hang out, and have fun. We will especially be as welcoming as possible. Anyone who's curious, if you're experts, but everyone's welcome. It's going to be really exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, we're looking forward to these. Like I said, very informal events, but looking forward to seeing everybody out there. Ed, you'll be at RSA. We're flying to opposite coasts. I don't know how we did this, but you'll be at RSA in San Francisco. Right. I'll be in National Harbor at the Gartner Security and Risk Summit. And so we're going to try and figure out how to do a live stream with you in San Francisco, me in DC, and talk about what we're seeing at these different events.
Oh, yeah.
And then we're all going to be in Vegas.
Yep. It just so I'm giving a talk with Exabeam over how our joint solutions helped TransUnion get more value from Exabeam and Cribl Stream. And so we're going to be doing a co-presentation at RSA, and then at in Vegas. So Nick, are you doing the talk at Snowflake?
I am doing the presentation at Snowflake. Yeah, I'll be talking about how we're actually using Cribl Stream to feed our Snowflake data warehouse. So it's a really interesting story about how we're building out product analytics at a very fast-growing startup.
And I think the thing that has to be just emphasized, made it ridiculously easy. We're able to take random data, we're able to put it through Stream, pump it through the XML parser in Snowflake, and boom, you got value. I mean, it's striking how easy it is to do it.
Yeah, definitely a good story. Looking forward to sharing that, and we're going to share that in a few different venues as well. All right, so there's our news.
Yes. All right, so let's go to the topic of the day.
All right. So Ed, talk about why we're talking about this today. You had an interaction on Twitter,
Right.
and I thought that went as well as could be expected, right? When you're talking about something like that on social, but introduce this to us. What happened here?
This comes up all the time. You have people who are talking about using Kafka for delivering and managing your observability and security data. As a way of Kafka sits in between your security data sources, your destinations. And then this is something we talked to quite a few people. I think Kafka is a great framework, but in terms of where to best use your tools and how it compares to Cribl Stream, it's not a great use case for your observability, monitoring your security data. So what we wanted to do was talk about common use cases for both frameworks and what are good fits for each tool and where it makes sense. We want to be very upfront that we don't want to criticize, we don't want to bash. I think they're great tools. We just want to talk about what's the best fit for situations. And also we understand sometimes people don't have a choice. You're making do with what you have. But it's just talk about where things fit, the best use of your time, and how these things work out, because this is like Nick was mentioning, individual was talking, it was on Twitter, we had a kind of conversation about what makes sense to use what, when, and where, and that's just, I think we just want to have that conversation again, a little more publicly, because this comes up all the time.
Yeah. I mean, so when we start talking to, say, a new prospect or a new company that's interested in what we're doing with Stream, or what they can do with Stream, typically what happens is somebody says, in the big data engineering group, they're like, well, we can do that with Kafka. And it's not that easy. Like there's a lot, there's a lot of trade-offs that you have to make. Kafka kind of forces you into knowing a lot of low-level primitives, and you have to know everything about it. Like you can't just kind of like dip your toe into the Kafka ecosystem. Like you've got to know about schema registry, you've got to know about connectors, you've got to know about perhaps KSQL DB if you want to do any kind of data manipulation in that environment. You may have to write some code. And typically the people that we see that are interested in Stream they're not Kafka people. And so it makes it difficult for them to say, all right, well, I'm going to take the control that I don't have and I'm going to try and get some version of control by passing this responsibility off to another team. So if I need changes made, I've got to file a ticket. If we suddenly start to want to bring in a new protocol or a new data source, that's a long process for that team to build out that capability. And I think the audiences are just fundamentally different. And we've got a slide coming up where we talk about the different types of users here. But typically, Kafka, the way that it's architected, you've got a producer that's putting data into a topic. And at some point in the future, your consumer might pull that data out and do something with it. And that data is stored durably. It's stored by default for 7 days. If you start to store data longer than that, I think you run into some pretty significant costs. And we've seen that come up with some of our folks as well that are
Right.
looking at using Kafka. And so it's really designed for this kind of asynchronous, let's decouple producers and consumers from data. And that lets people it frees them up, right? It reduces kind of communication overhead. It's a different use case for Stream, right? Where everything is in real time. It's not request response, right? We are either going out collecting data from, say, a file or some source, or data is being pushed to us via an agent. And then we're immediately routing that data we're doing some kind of processing on it, whether that's redaction, filtering, enrichment, et cetera, and then sending that on to where it's got to go. And so it's a really fundamentally different model in these two different solutions.
I agree, and that's one of the things where, like Kafka, for example, with the ability to store data, to house data with topics, where you have the ability to say, okay, I'm going to put data over here, or I might want data, so I'll look in this topic. Where in the observability and security space, you need that data delivered right now. There's typically no need to store data that I don't need to search, right? Because if you don't need to search it, you're just going to drop it. And so
Yeah.
that immediacy is necessary, and the cost, the overhead of pooling data before you get into observability tools can be quite substantial, right? And it can provide some complexity. And the idea is that, okay, I'm going to pay to store data in Splunk and in Kafka, because then you start looking at cost overheads. But where that pooling mechanisms make a lot of sense in event-driven applications, event-driven architectures, it does. At least myself, I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense in the observability and security space, especially when you combine the overhead, the time spent, and also we need the ability to do things with data in flight. This is something Kafka tends to struggle with. It's not that you can't do it; it just takes a lot of time and quite a bit of complexity. Where with Stream, it's purpose built, and it's purpose built and makes that process of transformation relatively simple.
Yeah.
And also, let's not forget supporting every observability agent and security agent and observability data platform as well. Those purpose built connectors just aren't there. Aren't there because I mean that's just not Kafka's audience. I think that's the thing we're trying to reinforce is it's not that they can't do it, but you have to think about the work. Is it supported? Do you need the complexity? Because your observability security environments are already tremendously complex. Does Kafka's complexity add, enhance, or detract from your ability to support your solutions?
And for us, Kafka is a source and a destination. So we can read from it, we can write to it. And so certainly it's there. We recognize that. And it does have a lot of use cases in data engineering as well as application architecture. And I think the other thing is, to add your point, like doing anything with data in that environment, you might try and use Kafka streams. You might try and use like overlay like a Apache NiFi on top of that environment as well. And that's more complexity on top of your Kafka environment as well. And that still doesn't give you all the protocol support that we typically
And a
see
tremendous
our
amount
customers need.
right, a tremendous amount of complexity and hardware at scale.
Yeah.
This is something that before I found Stream in 2018, we looked really hard at Kafka and NiFi, and it was just too much for a small team. We needed something simpler.
Yeah. So let's talk about what we see, for the next slide here on the different types of users, right? So look, whether you're using Kafka, whether you're using Stream, you're all nerds. You're just different kinds of nerds, right? And so I think we should make that point. Like it's just very, very different types of people in organizations using these different types of products. Kafka, you see a lot of application infrastructure and developers that are using that. They're using it for messaging and microservice applications. Ed talked about event-driven architectures. Kafka is very much a backbone for those things. Its pub sub model is ideal.
Yes.
And Kafka kind of grew up in the Hadoop era, right? A lot of open source. So it's very common to see, kind of grew up in this whole, universe of the Hadoops, of the Sparks of the world. And so you see it used a lot for big data engineering. They want to move, batches of records around, load those into maybe, some different analytics environment. But the users are very different than we see for Cribl Stream. And Ed, this is your background. I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, and those are the things that are important. Is like it's just fundamentally different. I got to get my data from my sources to my destinations as fast as possible. I need to be able to transform in flight. I need to be able to share. I need to be able to pull data. I need to be able to pull data from put data to my storage, pull data from my storage, and also delegate and have appropriate role-based accesses. So, for example, with our GitOps workflow, where I can empower my developers to build code but not touch production. I can empower my incident response team to pull data with Cribl Replay. It's just different types of use cases and a different type of flexibility.
Yeah, definitely. And so the tools are built for those different groups. Whereas Kafka is kind of generic, right? Like it's a Swiss Army chainsaw. You can do anything you want with it, but you have to do it. Stream is really the difference is it's built for purpose, right? It's built for this audience.
Exactly. I mean, all those connectors, like sure, and that's something where I'm going to emphasize that if you want to use Cribl Stream to have some of the data processing fabrics of Apache Kafka, you could do that. There's different ways to manage data. There's great ways to build data. Like you mentioned, for example, you could use Stream to say, okay, I'm going to pull data off of one topic and put it on another topic, or connect different Kafka clusters. So you have those abilities, but it's not the audience that it's for. So I'm not saying that you can do it. It's just we're just talking about the audiences, and just check. I think the biggest thing is check what you can support, check what your engineering team can support, how much complexity can you support, because we just want to help you get what you need done as best possible.
Yeah, and Christopher Owen on LinkedIn, he's doing a replay right now from Stream as we're talking. So, the replay function is another one, right? And we talked earlier, Kafka stores data durably, right, by default. But often replaying that data like in a way that makes sense to a SecOps engineer or SIEM engineer or somebody like a Splunk admin. It's a very different world doing that in Kafka than it is in another kind of more targeted system. And so being able to replay that data from tiered storage is really something that people use a lot in this environment. So another key difference. Yeah.
It's great that you brought that up because Kafka's that temporary storage where we're talking about being able to replay from a deep archive. And that's another thing, that ability to say Stream can easily write data to an object store, support all the common object stores, and then give you a GUI to pull it back. And you're not just saying, I'm going to pull all the data out of the bucket or also just a timeline. You can also support pulling an IP address. You have events with an IP address or how something's structured. You have a lot more flexibility and specificity with being able to pull data. This is something we were having a LinkedIn conversation talking about the rehydration concepts, and which is particularly powerful because you're always trying to manage your resources, time versus retention, and those costs. And so with Stream, by you being able to use your object stores as to store data at the lowest cost possible, you have a lot more flexibility and the ability to easily pull it back. Because Kafka does have a sort of replay mechanism. It's just not easy to use. Where we're targeting something that's going to be easy to use and also able to delegate it to the right team. So it's not just your admin team. We can delegate it to a variety of teams to get value from it.
Yeah, if you have any questions about either of these, my Kafka skills, I'll admit, are a little rusty anymore. We'll try and answer any questions you have. Drop them into either LinkedIn, Twitter, or YouTube. I think those are all the places that we're at. And we'll try and get those answered. We've got a few other slides we want to kind of talk through, like different architectures. So, here's the Kafka architecture. And if you haven't seen this style of diagram, kind of explaining what Kafka is, it must be really comfortable underneath that rock that you've been staying under, because this is pretty ubiquitous at this point.
Oh, yeah.
And so, how does Kafka work? It disambiguates producers and consumers of data. All right, that's effectively it. And it splits data. The broker is effectively a data store, and it maintains a number of topics split into different partitions. And so the producer can write data off to one or more topics, and then consumers can, oddly enough, consume this data whenever they want to. And they have to know like how much they've already read, or they want to know when they want to start reading that data from. So they have to maintain that offset internally, so they have to maintain their own state, so they don't reread data that they've already read. Or they have to know that they've already seen that data, or they don't miss data in this kind of append only data structure.
And I think this is a real strength for Kafka, especially if you have a global data footprint. Imagine you have your Kafka clusters, and you have the ability to have an enormous amount of resiliency with replication and the ability to synchronize data over large spaces and also large volumes. And so for those sort of use cases, like you're running a planet scale social media like a Twitter or something like that, that ability to have Kafka as that queuing mechanism and to manage your data flows is extremely powerful.
Yeah. Well, like LinkedIn, I think LinkedIn is a really good example, right? Kafka grew up at LinkedIn.
Exactly.
That's where it entered its life. And do you ever get like an email from LinkedIn saying so and so wants to connect with you, and then before that email shows up, you go to LinkedIn and you see you already have a connection request? Well, there's a consumer that I imagine some kind of connection request topic or series of topics that every now and then a consumer will read that, and that will trigger an email. But that is also already that's already influencing the website that you're seeing. So you see that connection request first if you go to the website, because the email process, the email consumer hasn't read yet. And so it's an example of this kind of asynchronous data consumption, right? When I send Ed a connection request, the producer puts that message into the topic, and at some point in the future, the batch job kicks off and says, all right, let's go read from that topic and we'll send all those emails. But you can kind of short circuit that by going directly to the site and seeing that little alert up in the upper right-hand corner.
That's a perfect use case, and thanks for bringing that up, because that gives you that context to why this is so valuable. When you're running it at the kind of scale LinkedIn is running at, it's just the only way. It's just the only that concept is the only way to manage your data, with any kind of efficiency.
Yeah. Yeah, and it works extremely well for those types of use cases. Less well if you are trying to feed a seam or some other security product that needs real-time information conditioned for it. So this is the Kafka architecture, very well understood. Doesn't make it less complex to run. Cribl Stream, Ed, you know this backwards and forwards. Take it away.
Well, and I think there's a few things is that you have a diversity of data sources. So not only is it open source and open protocol data sources like a syslog or an HTTP, but also Kafka, every cloud data source under God's green earth, and Azure and AWS. And then you have Splunk Universal Forwarders and Elastic Beats and Blue and Ds, and they're all talking slightly differently. And the idea is that we want to be able to support, and it's very important, I think, from our core value of the company is that we're going to give you choice and control over your data. We're not going to enforce that on you. And so if you want to use the proprietary agents to push data into your systems, and by golly, we're going to support you to do it. And you're just not going to have that kind of flexibility otherwise. And so we're going to give you that flexibility to manage that data in flight. We're going to make it easy for you. Now, we do have mechanisms where data does hit the file system if there is failure. So if you have a failure in your destinations, you have an option to then spool data out to a persistent queue so that when your destination comes back online, Stream will read that data back into its pipelines and then send it to its destinations. But otherwise, we're not the data is not hitting the file system. It's not the same concepts. It's not going to a topic. So it creates a vastly different hardware footprint as well. So you're looking at a different cost model because ideally with our personas, with the users, the audiences that we're targeting, they need that data delivered as fast as humanly possible to Splunk or Elastic. There's no reason to pool it or store it and then deliver it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, Nick?
It totally does. And if you're watching this live stream and you want to know more about how persistent queuing works in Cribl Stream, you can go check out our YouTube channel where we did a live stream about that, I think 3 or 4 weeks ago. So you can get fully read into that. And there's our sandbox if you want to play with this thing live. But the stream architecture is stateless, but we do have persistent queues if you do want to ensure that if your sources or destinations go down, you can save that data. But we really break it up into two things, right? We've got our leader node and our worker node. And the leader node is the thing you interact with, right? That's the face. That's where you would configure your routes and pipelines and how you would do your replay and so on. And the leader node pushes that configuration down to, oddly enough, the worker nodes, and that's where the work happens. Naming things is hard, but sometimes it gets really easy. So the worker nodes actually do the data processing. Ed, how is the worker node different from, say, like a Kafka broker? Like it's I know it's a very, very different model, but maybe break that down. Like what happens on the worker?
Well, I think what happens on the worker is that so you have a server, so that's the worker that has a number of workers on the, and so you basically tie it to a core, and so say you have a 16 core server, you reserve 14 cores for Stream. So you have 14 workers. Each worker is completely independent of the others. They all have a common version of code that they run on, and they're also independent of each other. So if for some reason one of those workers dies, blows up, and then you're not necessarily losing anything. And so from how you manage it, how you scale it, is just it's something that I think it's simpler than working with the producers. And I think is one of the things that gives you the ability to manage data in flight. It's just a lot simpler because it's built into it. Like for example, with Kafka, you're having to push data through multiple processes and have code in multiple places in order to do something. And then the visualizations and the being able to manage it is very command line, very, very kind of, it's rough where it's very visual with Stream. And also, I think it's just that ability to validate your data. It's everything's very lightweight as opposed to things that at least feel heavier to me with managing Kafka. And so those are
there's no zookeeper here.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't even get me started there. And that's the idea is that you let's just talk about like Kafka has to maintain state across potentially an enormous cluster of servers. So you have to have something that manages your state, and with Zookeeper, and if you've ever dealt with Zookeeper failure or corruption, you get upset about it. And recovery and you just don't have to have those things. But that's because the worker architecture and Stream is just fundamentally simpler. and that
Yep.
the idea is that we're designed to scale. If you want to bring on more workers, it's as simple as taking a container online. Boom, a few seconds later, you now have a worker. You do the same thing with Kubernetes, so you're essentially unlimited scale, and that flexibility and that ease of use and that lightweight is just it has just so many benefits.
Yeah. And, I was talking about our sources and destinations. I think we support over 80
Right.
sources and destinations now. And then there's RESTful interfaces. I've yet to see something we cannot collect from or write to
Yeah, you
yet.
can build and that's a huge thing, is that we don't have something purpose built for your particular solution. You can easily build something, and so we want to have as broad a support as possible, and also make it easy. It's not some sort of surgery and rocket science if you need to support some sort of edge case. And so there are a few protocols we don't necessarily support, but we're going to support some of your big data protocols very, very soon, because they're getting really, really popular. Like we're going to support Pulsar pretty soon, I think, and those are the kind of things that we don't quite do yet. But that's on the roadmap because people are interested in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically, if our customers are asking us for a protocol, we're going to add it. That's how it works. All right. So let's move on to the next slide and talk about kind of, the data processing model in.
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to make this bigger on my side so I can see a little bit better.
And I love this. I love this representation of being able to break something down and make it understandable. I mean, the visualizations for how this works is great.
Yeah. And this also talks about packs, right? We talked about at the top of the live stream, right? We got our contest going on. This shows you where you can drop packs in at various points in the data lifecycle in Cribl Stream.
And also how you can disconnect your data. And this is so you can have pipelines on your sources, pipelines in your routes, pipelines on your destinations in order to break up how you're managing and how you're processing your data. Something I encourage everyone when I talk to them about implementing Stream is that you have to have a more a developer mindset and more of a data science mindset of breaking these things up as you scale, and because there's just certain things you just run into, things you want to do, but this is a great way to look at it of where your data is and how you want to manage it.
Yeah.
And
So I'm sorry, go ahead after you.
no, no, good.
So the routes basically decide where stuff goes, right? Based on some condition in the data or some criteria that you've defined. And then once the routes say, all right, send the data here, and that can be multiple places. You're not limited to just one processing pipeline. Then that data drops into a processing pipeline, and this is where the work happens, right? This is where you might drop null values. You might remove duplicate fields. You might mask PII data or encrypt a credit card number or something like that. But that's where the work really happens. And then you deliver that data to one or more destinations. So by separating kind of where things go from what happens to them, you can think about things in a very clean way. It lowers the cognitive overhead of the work that you're actually doing because it gives you these different paradigms to think about.
And the UI makes it so much easier. I've tried to do this same sort of concepts in a command line environment, and it's just it getting once you get to any kind of complexity, it gets very hard to manage anymore. I especially like with routes, with you can have the ability. Okay, I have one event. I want to deliver this event to S3. I want to deliver this event to Splunk. I want to deliver this event to Elastic. I wanted to deliver it to some sort of security appliance. We make it relatively easy to take that event, split it up, clone it, and then send it to wherever you need to send it to, and in the right format. That's one of the things I want to mention in terms of pre-processing pipeline. That's I guess you can't see my cursor, but the post-processing pipelines are where you do that. And so you can say I'm going to clone, and that's a use your route, and say my destination is this destination is S3, this destination is say Splunk, this destination is Elastic, this destination is Exabeam, and it's remarkably easy, and it gives you that kind of flexibility to put you in control over what you want to do. It's
Yeah.
hugely powerful.
And I know we're getting close to lunch because my stomach's growling. I hope people aren't hearing that on the microphone. But another way to make that easier
Uh-huh.
is with Quick Connect. And so this is our drag and drop interface. I've got a source, I've got a destination. You connect the two with your mouse, and then you can drop in a pack. If there's a predefined pack that you said, I just want to apply this pack, go for it, and then send that on. Or you can choose pass through, which just says do nothing to this, send it on its way, just route it to multiple places. So there's a lot of different ways you can interact with this. So if you're infrastructure and operations, if you're in a cybersecurity team, it really is built for those personas, not kind of the data. I mean, you can do data engineering with this, of course, but it's not really, you're not dropping into Python. You're not writing Spark code. And so
Thank God.
it's a very different experience. Yeah, thank God, right? So it's a very different experience. So horses for courses, right? Kafka is definitely a great product or great open source project, but it's not. I would argue that it's not ideal for the observability use cases that we typically see.
Yeah, and especially from in terms of support, I see a lot of companies that spend a lot of effort of putting data into Kafka, then sending it, then having that data move over to a Splunk or Elastic, and you just run into you always have to think about, is the complexity that we're adding worth the added overhead, especially with
Yeah.
the shortage of engineering time right now. My argument is you want to keep everything as simple as humanly possible. You just don't have enough time to mess around with complexity unless that complexity is delivering genuine value.
Yeah. So let's go to the last slide and wrap it up, and I'll go get lunch. All right. So we've got two places you can play with this today. You can go to our sandbox. We've got a series of sandboxes that you can run through. Some of them take about 15 minutes. Some of them take up to 45. But they'll give you a full taste for what the product is, how to use it. There's nothing for you to have to spin up or configure. It just works. It's actually pretty cool. Or Cribl Cloud. You can go to cribl.cloud, sign up for I used an old graphic, so this one's on me. I copied and pasted this from an old deck, and so it's not log
Oh,
stream anymore. It is stream, so
so
I
you
will
said
get.
log stream today, not me. There we go. That's
Oh
better.
man, so see, look, we're still learning. Old habits are hard to break. But you can get a free stream account if you go to cribl.cloud, and you can process up to a terabyte a day for free. And if you want to do more, reach out. We're happy to chat. But these are two avenues that you have to experiment with the product. There's no requested demo button on our website, so you're not going to get harassed. But check these out if you want to know more. And if you have questions, Ed's got the link up. You can join the community.
I can't say enough about the sandbox. I too many times have had vendors say, here's a 14-day trial, and this sandbox walks you through how to get value out of the tool. You go hands-on. I mean, how many times has everyone had a flash or a shockwave simulation of a tool on how to use it? This is the actual tool, and so just you can get a sense of is this going to add value or is this going to work for me right away? I can't say enough about it.
I think 14-day trials are they're insulting, right? Like you get your
I
account, you
know.
go through like you verified your email, you do all this other stuff, and then like something else happens and you forget about it, and by the time you get back to it, the trial has expired and you got to sign up for it again. And I just keep repeating that same model every time I try a new product. So just look, if you're a vendor out there, just make your stuff available. Like create a sandbox.
Make it easy.
Yeah, make it easy for your folks to try your products. So that's what we've got. If you got questions, leave a comment. Reach out to us on Twitter or join the community. Ed and I are both very active there. We're also active on Reddit. We have a Reddit community, so we're very easy to get a hold of. So hopefully this has kind of answered some of the questions about, well, when would I use each? Where are the strong suits? And Chris saying, the sandbox has saved his bacon quite a bit. I think just being able to test out new ideas and experiment and kind of relearn old concepts. The sandbox is definitely worth checking out. So that's what we've got for today. Next week, I think we're talking about. I don't think I can give it away. We've
Yeah.
got something on the training front for
There you go.
everybody that we can talk about next week. We'll have Darianne back. She was here with us last week. But some very exciting stuff that we're going to talk about next week. So make sure you are available at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern.
2 p.m. Eastern.
2 p.m. It's amazing how difficult that 3-hour math is.
The right time zone. Yeah.
Right, got to get the right time zone. Another live stream next Thursday. And if you have any questions, we're always available. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for everyone's time. Have a great day. Bye bye.
All right, bye.
Thank you.